Joe Anderson and Al Clopine of Pure Financial Advisors have the answers to your retirement plan. This is your money, your wealth.
Hey, when you think of estate planning, most of you just think only the rich need one. But is that true? Do you need a will? Do you need a trust? Or maybe you don't need one at all. Stick around. Over the next half an hour, we are going to break it down to see what type of estate plan, if any, that you need. Because most of you do not have one. All right? So stick around. Welcome to the show, everyone. Joe Anderson here, certified financial planner. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. I'm the president of Pure Financial Advisors, and I'm with the big man, of course, Big Al Clopine. He's going to break things down. We're going to talk about wills, trusts, powers of attorney, all sorts of different documents that you absolutely need. Because one of the biggest artists of all time, Prince Rogers Nelson, from Minnesota, my neighbor, I grew up just down the street from Prince. Not when Prince was big, but of course when he was a small little child. So it was dear to me, and it made me very sad when he passed, but he died with about a $300 million estate. $300 million. So I don't care if you have a $3 estate, a $50 estate, or a $300 million estate. Do you need an estate plan? Don't do what Prince did. Get educated. That's today's Financial Focus. When you look at the statistics, look at this, 64% of Americans do not have any type of estate plan. Then you take a look at single people, right? They have children. 83% of individuals that have children do not have an estate plan. And then you take a look at this, 51% of married couples that have children do not have an estate plan. So we first of all have to define what the heck is an estate plan. It's basically a document to make sure that you have a direction so when you pass that your loved ones know what to do. It's extremely important. To help us break through this, let's bring on the big man, Big Al Clopine. We're talking death today, Alan.
I know, can you believe it? And we're going to try to make it humorous somehow.
Somehow.
Yes.
But it's an important topic when you look at an overall financial strategy. When it comes to your money, your wealth, this is the name of the show. Estate planning is an extremely important topic because it's not necessarily what happens when you die. How about if you're disabled? Bills still have to be paid. So there's a lot of different aspects of an estate plan that people should be aware of.
Well, there are, Joe. And really, when you think about it, there are a number of components, some of which are going to help you while you're living and some after you pass away. And our focus today is about estate planning. And I guess number one, we're going to get into what is an estate plan. In other words, what components would go into an estate plan. And number two is going to be wills versus trusts. Should you have a will? Should you have a trust? Which is going to be better for you? How about this? Where there's a will, there's a way. What if you don't even have a will and you pass away? Like Prince, as Joe just said. And then gruesome estate planning mistakes. We've got an expert, estate planning attorney, Nicole Newman, who's going to help us out with this one. And then finally, we're going to put it all together with legacy planning to make sure that you're doing what you need to do with your assets and even while you're living. As Joe just said, if you're disabled or something like this, you need someone to take over your affairs. So Joe, this is one of those topics that a lot of people don't necessarily want to talk about, but it's really important.
You know, Sunday morning, let's talk about dying.
Let's talk about death.
You know, what the heck. But, you know, you take a look. Let's just kind of get to the basics here. When it comes to an estate plan, what the heck is it and what do you need? You know, do you need a trust? Do you need a will? You know, so a will is a document to make sure that you document what happens when you pass. But there's pros and cons to a will. There's financial powers of attorney, extremely important, and also medical powers of attorney. So when you look at a financial power of attorney, let's say if you're disabled, who's going to make those financial decisions for you? Who's going to continue to pay the mortgage, the medical bill, the cable bill, and everything else? And then we'll dive into a living trust. There's different types of living trust that you can get into. There's a simple trust. You can get complex. There's irrevocable, there's revocable trust. There's all sorts of different things that you want to make sure that you understand and so that you can draft the appropriate plan for you.
Yeah, Joe, and I think it's very confusing for a lot of people, but why don't we get into what are some of the benefits of a trust? Because for a lot of you, a trust is probably going to make a lot of sense. So number one, when you have a trust and it's properly funded, we'll get into that, it avoids probate. So you don't have to go through the court system. Your heirs don't have to go through the court system. It's less expensive after you pass away because there's no probate fees. Of course, it's a little more expensive to set up the top. You'll get your heirs, your beneficiaries will get the assets quicker right? And it's private, it's not public. And so for a number of you, a trust is going to be a way to go, because then you're going to have the disposition of the assets that you want, and it's going to be a private matter. Your trustee is going to take care of it for you. It happens quickly. Sometimes wills can take a year. In Prince's case, it's probably going to take maybe 5 years, maybe even a decade, Joe.
Well, I mean, if you look at Southern California, I mean, especially here in San Diego, there's only a few probate court judges. So you'll be sticking in line with every, I mean, and if you look at the demographic of Southern California, I mean, people like to retire here, right? And that's what you pass here. And then it's just trying to get your assets through to the next generation could take significant time. It's going to be extremely expensive in public record. A lot of you probably don't want that. But guess what? You're dead, right? So then it's the heirs that is going to be taking care of this. And if you look at what is really probate all about or what the expenses are, we have an example because I think people get confused here. It's not necessarily what your net worth is. It's what your gross assets are. So if you look at this house here, and so you got $600,000 home, right? But it has a $550,000 mortgage, right? So people think, well, hey, my net equity is only 50 grand. So the $50,000 is not a big deal. Guess what? The probate fees are based on the gross estate, the $600,000. In this example, there's also an individual retirement account. But as you know, if you watch this show, that individual retirement accounts, they have a direct beneficiary designation. So that would avoid the probate process. So if I have a retirement account, a life insurance, annuities, things like that, that have a direct beneficiary designation, that would avoid the probate process. But if I have real property, my home, I have a brokerage account, those need to be titled in the name of the trust, or that will go through probate. And it's the gross value. Guess what? If you do have life insurance, let's say you have $1 million life insurance contract, right? You pass away, sure, the heirs get that $1 million, but that $1 million then is on top. So of gross estates when it comes to estate planning and things like that. So depending on, are you subject to an estate tax, probate, court fees, and everything else, there's a lot of things to discuss.
Yeah, Joe, and in that example, what we saw was a person with about $100,000. Let's see, where's my camera? There it is, right there. Anyway, that's the $100,000 estate. The probate fees could be $30,000 in that example because, Joe, as you just said, we're basing it on, the court bases it on the gross value of that estate.
As you can see, Al's a CPA. I'm a certified financial planner. We have no business, zero business talking about this.
Yeah, but we're going to
That's why.
We're going to try anyway, right?
No, we're not. We're done because we have the expert. She's on board. Nicole Newman is going to join us when we get back. She is going to break things down on a legal perspective. So an expert is here, not these two knuckleheads. So stick around. Don't go anywhere. Good morning, everyone. Show's called Your Money, and it's Your Wealth. Hey, welcome back to the show. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Joe Anderson, Big Al, hanging out here, talking about estate planning. What happens if you become disabled or die? What are the steps that you need to take? What are the documents? What are some things that you need to consider? Before we dive into that, let's go to the true-false question.
Putting my money in a trust will ensure my children receive the money instead of my creditors. Joe, I'm going to say that's false because your bills don't go away when you pass. Although I have heard that if you put your money in the trust, it makes it a little bit more difficult for your creditors. And if your kids, if your trustee decides not to pay the bills, then the creditors may have to actually open probate to get that thing paid. But the bills themselves don't go away. So that's a false statement.
Well, how about if it's an irrevocable trust?
Well, that's different. That's a different entity.
True. We have an estate planning attorney. Hopefully you're somewhere around here that can answer that question.
Yeah, we have someone who's much better than us in a moment. But Joe, before that, I guess now we've got an opportunity for you to see if you can answer a question without even knowing the question. You got 60 seconds, brother.
Let's do it.
Hi, Joe. Got a question for you. The economy is not doing too well and hasn't been for quite a while, and the economy has just recently only grown 0.5%. Some people are speculating that we're going to go into a recession. So what do you guys recommend we do as investors in case that happens?
That's a tough one. I mean, because it's a speculation. Yes, if you take a look at the economy, I mean, there's always going to be doom and gloom, right? So what are you going to do? If I knew if there was going to be a recession tomorrow, right, well, then we would all go in cash. But we don't know when we're going to be in a recession. The top economists have zero clue. So you have one person that's going to say, hey, you know what, the economy's doing actually pretty good. Look at corporate profits, look at all the cash, look at all these companies, they're buying back their own stock. Look at, right? And then you got the other side, it's like, oh my gosh, Europe is going to hell in a handbasket and the United States is following along right with them. So what do? Should we buy gold? Should we go into cash? No, you have to stay invested. This is a long-term strategy. When you take a look at a globally diversified portfolio, you're going to have cash, you're going to have bonds, you're going to have stocks, you're going to have real estate, you're going to have commodities. When people fail financially is because they hear the speculation and they get out of their portfolio at the wrong time all the time. So you have to stay the course.
You almost busted. Not bad, my friend. That's a tough question. And really the answer is if we knew when the market was going to go up or down, we would all be millionaires.
Yeah, but I mean, here's the
billionaires.
problem, Al. It's like, well, you listen to Wall Street, stockbrokers, and things of that nature. That's how they're getting compensated, right? Hey, I know when the stocks are going to go up. I know when they're going to go down. So follow my advice, and I'm going to leave you to the promised land. No one has that information. And I swear, if I did have that information, I would not share it. I'd be in Fiji drinking, on my laptop making trillions. No one has that information, but that's another topic for another day. Let's get back to the point at hand, Mr. Clopine. We're talking about estate planning. So when you accumulate all this wealth and when you pass away or if you become disabled, what's going to happen? A lot of you think, hey, I don't need a trust. I don't need a will. Well, guess what? Everyone out there has an estate plan. If you do not draft an estate plan, guess what? Uncle Jerry will draft one for you, and it's not going to be as nearly as efficient. That means dying intestate. So then the state basically says, all right, well, let's take a look at the family tree, and they distribute the assets based on that. That is a plan that you don't want to have. So you want to make sure that you have an appropriate estate plan, but then it gets complex. That's why we have Nicole Newman on board. Alan, you have a guest that is going to educate you and I and all of our viewers on the pros and cons of certain types of estate plans. So let's get to that.
Thank you, Joe, and I'm pretty sure that our viewers have been waiting for this part because we have an expert. Joe and I are doing our best, but you actually are an expert. You're an estate planning attorney, Nicole Newman in Orange County. Thanks for being part of the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I know you do some seminars and you have this topic, gruesome estate planning mistakes. So what are some of the mistakes? Let's start with one of the big ones.
Okay, so one of the big gruesome mistakes that come through my office is when someone has died and they had a will. So it's not only a problem when someone dies without a will, but it's also a problem when someone dies with just a will.
Okay, and why is that?
And it's a problem because they are not avoiding probate. So the folks that actually did go to the trouble to make a will, they're only one little step above people that have done absolutely nothing. And they're only a little step above someone that has done nothing because at least when you make a will, you are naming who your beneficiaries are going to be rather than leaving it up to the state of California. But you are not avoiding probate. And I find that a lot of people get this confused, including my own dad. They interchange the terms will and trust all the time, and they think once they have their will, then they're set. But their beneficiaries are still going to go through that long probate process.
Would you say most people should have a trust, or is a will sufficient, or what do you think?
Well, here in California, I get asked that question quite a bit, and I would say here in California, what will usually trigger the need for a trust is when we have real estate and or children. That's when I'll usually highly encourage exploring a trust.
Right. And I think now I guess there's many reasons to make an estate plan. I think you've got a case example, right?
Yes. So the other gruesome mistake that I see is when people leave their beneficiaries their assets outright. So outright distributions, this means that the beneficiaries get the money, they can go do whatever they want with it. It goes in their name, they can go put it all on black in Vegas. And I'll usually see this in wills, or when someone has died intestate, the default is an outright distribution, or a lot of trusts will say it. When we die, everything goes equally between the kids, outright, free of trust. And the big problem with outright distributions can be certain beneficiaries. And one problematic beneficiary can be our Frankies, our son Frankies.
Really?
Yes. So Frankie is our son.
Yeah, and we got a picture of Frankie there.
Yeah,
so that's what we're a little worried about, right?
Oh yeah, that's our typical Frankie. Frankie that I've helped quite a bit in trust administrations. And Frankie is just our son that has not been motivated by life yet. And so Frankie, and at Frankie's age, it's not looking like he's going to be very motivated by life. And so he's probably very dependent on you to take care of him. And he's not even able to handle his own financial affairs, let alone having a big estate dumped in his lap, your estate or even a portion of your estate. So if Frankie receives a distribution outright, he's going to blow right through it. Now, I've heard the statistic that it takes about 18 months for a beneficiary to blow through their inheritance, no matter how large or small.
You're kidding.
Well, and I'm telling you from experience,
wow.
The Frankies have the ability to take care of it in about 2 or 3 months. They can really blow right through it. Now, for a lot of folks, they love their Frankie. In fact, that's probably why Frankie is how he is. He probably was a little too loved. So they love their Frankie, and they want to make sure that Frankie is taken care of after they're gone. Or we will come across people that they don't love their Frankie so much anymore. They have had it with his lazy ways.
So how does a trust help in this? So with a will, I guess Frankie gets the assets right away. Let's talk about a trust.
Okay, so with a trust, we are able to structure the distribution to where Frankie would not be in charge of managing his funds. So Frankie will inherit from you, so you don't have to go to the extremes of disinheriting him. But the trustee will be in charge of all his funds. So then that way the trustee can make sure that that money lasts for as long as possible and that he's not able to blow it on unnecessary expenditures.
And I guess that could be set up to distribute at a certain age, or it could be for the whole life if that's what
Yes, there's different ways, and it's all dependent on your circumstances, and that's something that I go into detail with my clients.
Okay, now what about when it's a son-in-law?
Okay, yeah, well, our son-in-laws are other problematic beneficiaries. Now, it's not just the son-in-laws, but it's our daughter-in-laws as well, but I'll use the son-in-laws as the example here.
So, and the son-in-laws usually have tattoos, right?
Oh, yeah, well, those are the ones that usually strike fear in a lot of hearts, especially in Orange County. Now, I'll have people come in and they'll tell me, you know, Nicole, I love my son-in-law. Or they'll tell me, I can't stand my son-in-law. My daughter's saddled with a loser, I can't stand him. Either whether they love him or they don't love him, they do not want him inheriting their assets. And unfortunately, if they leave their daughter her inheritance outright and she receives her inheritance and then she passes away first, guess who's getting that inheritance? Fred is, not your grandchildren. And then if Fred turns around and gets remarried and then he dies or divorces, now your estate has gone completely sideways. Now it's gone to Fred's new spouse. And then if Fred's new spouse passes away, well, your grandchildren are not their natural heirs. So that can be very problematic for a lot of beneficiaries.
Yeah, so that's a great reason, I think, to have a trust. And Nicole, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And to get more information, you can go to our website, purefinancial.com. We'll have a page with Nicole on there. But stay tuned, because after we get back from the break, we're going to turn the show over to you with your email questions, as well as we're going to kind of summarize and wrap this show up. Stay tuned.
Hey, welcome back. Show's called Your Money or Wealth. Joe Anderson, Big Al, hanging out, talking estate planning today. Want to thank Nicole Newman. Al and her talked about different things when it comes to your overall estate. We're going to wrap it up, making sure that you have all the information before we leave today. But before we do that, let's go to the true-false question.
As long as my assets are listed in my trust, I don't have to change the title of the assets to the name of the trust. Well, that's absolutely false. You do have to change the title of your assets, because if you don't, Joe, then those assets are going to go through probate. Now, that doesn't count for your retirement accounts because they transfer on beneficiary statement, but your home, your non-retirement accounts, they need to be in the name of the trust.
Big mistakes there, because you look at the Schedule A in your trust and it will list all of the different assets. So people will open up the trust and they'll say, all right, well, here's my residence, right? Then you'll look at, here's this brokerage account, and it'll have everything all nice in order form right there in the trust document. That doesn't mean anything. That just helps the beneficiaries or the successor trustee to make sure that, all right, well, there's a brokerage account that I got to find. Here's a checking account that I have to find. Those accounts actually have to be titled in the name of the trust. So for instance, it's not going to be, let's say my home, it's not under Joseph Anderson. It's under the Anderson Family Trust, dated whatever date that I got the trust established. And so you have to look at the titling. If it's in your name, look at your property tax statement. If you own a home, that will give you a good understanding if your home is actually titled in the name of the trust. Al and I see this all the time. You purchase a trust and you never get it funded. Look at all of the options to make sure that you know all of your different assets, I should say, to make sure that it is titled appropriately.
Yeah, and Joe, I would say to kind of close the gap on estate planning, let's get into estate taxes. Now, this isn't such a big deal anymore because with the estate tax rates, if you have less than $5.45 million, there is no estate tax. If you're above that, that estate tax is 40% of those assets above it. Now they've got new portability rules, which means husband and wife each get that $5.45 million. So a couple can transfer about $11 million to the next generation without an estate tax. The first spouse that dies, the survivor does have to file an estate tax return, Form 706, within 9 months. But if you do that, as a couple, you get $11 million. So, Joe, it's just not as big a deal as it used to be.
Right. You have to have a giant estate for that to happen for most average Joes. No pun intended. It doesn't necessarily affect. Hey, but here's something that we want to give to all of our viewers today. We put together an estate plan organizer. This is kind of the first step for you to start organizing your estate, making sure that you understand what steps that you need to take. Do you need a will? Do you need a trust? Do you have a power of attorney? Do you have a healthcare directive? Do you have a pour-over will? Do you have HIPAA and all of this other stuff, for lack of a better word, to make sure that everything is in order? Get our estate plan organizer. It's free. It's our gift to you for sticking around this long to watch this program. Hey, let's flip it. Let's flip the switch. Let's turn the show to you to get to our email bag because there is some interesting questions this week, my friend.
First one is from Henry, Elfin Forest. Do I need a trust if I've listed all my children as beneficiaries of all of my assets? And interestingly enough, there actually is a new rule as of January 1st. You can put your real estate in a transfer on death titling, and you can also do that with your non-qualified assets. So the truth is you don't really need a trust to avoid probate. However, there's a lot of reasons why you would want a trust, as Nicole and I just talked about, because whoever's going to get the assets will have ultimate control. And if it's husband and wife and you have separate property, you could have your property end up going to the wrong people. So we don't recommend it, but you can do that.
Yeah, joint title is another issue too. So it's like, hey, well, if I put Junior on joint title of my home, when I pass away, well, then Junior just will inherit the home. Yeah, that will definitely avoid any type of probate process, and then that will have Junior and have full ownership of the home. But guess what? Junior will own the home with you jointly. And then you misstep up in cost basis, not passing. So doing that stuff is not really great. Hey, I think we got time for one more. Let's see what we can do here.
And I think so too. I think this is Sharon from El Cajon. And she writes, there's a good chance that my dog will outlive me. I want to make sure that he is well taken care of for the rest of his natural life. My children are resentful of the dog. Is there something I can do to protect and provide for him? And
are you sure this is not from Ruthie from Minneapolis?
Your mother?
Yes.
Well, the answer is yes. There are trusts that you can set up for your pets, believe it or not. You can set up a dog trust, a cat trust, and we've seen them. They actually exist out there. So yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, I guarantee that's from my mom. She's incognito with Sharon from El Cajon.
Your mom did talk to me about, maybe I'll set up that cat.
Yeah, she got a new dog.
So much about
she
Joe.
Thinks his dog is going to live forever, and she's going to just cut me out of the will.
Yeah.
All right, hey, hopefully that was enough estate planning for you. Get on with your Sunday, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, we have another phenomenal show. For Big Al Clopine, I'm Joe Anderson. You just watched another phenomenal episode of Your Money, Your Wealth. Cheers.